There are plenty of moments within a Pokemon Go player's journey which I would consider to be the most memorable. So for this video, I want to list off the things that happen to a Pokemon Go player that they will never forget as they played the game. Alright, how's it going everyone? Count Jinsula here with a brand new Pokemon Go video. I hope your day is going really well, and let's get right into it. Alright, so for myself, I've been playing Pokemon Go for several years, pretty much since the beginning. As soon as Pokemon Go launched for the first time, I actually downloaded the game and played it, and I will say that for the past 7 or 8 years that I've been playing this game, there have been several moments that I would say are the most memorable. These are the moments that you will never forget. It often involves catching specific kinds of Pokemon. Sometimes it's going to be some kind of achievement or some kind of event or experience that you go to. Like, I really do think there's plenty of things that the average Pokemon Go player will want to experience before they end up quitting the game. So yeah, that's what this video is going to be. I'm going to be listing off some of the things that I've experienced that I would consider to be the most memorable, and I really hope some of you will be able to experience this as you played the game. So the first thing is probably the most impactful out of this entire list, and it's going to be the first time you get yourself a shundo. This is something that a lot of players aim to get as they play Pokemon Go. Basically, a shundo is a perfect appraisal Pokemon that also happens to be shiny. The very first shundo that I ever got was actually a Rayquaza, and not just a Rayquaza, of course, it was a shiny Rayquaza. I was doing a lucky trade with a friend and I got lucky. It was a 100% IV. And yeah, it definitely elevated my Pokemon Go gameplay. It was probably one of the most penultimate moments within my early days of playing Pokemon Go. It was so exciting, and the fact that my first ever shundo was a Rayquaza, I mean, that just says everything. I mean, ever since then, I was able to collect a ton of shundos, whether it be through lucky trades or just through sheer luck with community days and raid battles, but I will say that the first shundo that I ever got is probably the most memorable one. Now, the next thing you will never forget is, of course, the first 100% IV Pokemon that you get. I do think that when it comes to perfect IVs, it's one of those things that you do not often get, but by the time you get to the point where I am, you end up getting yourself quite a few 100% IVs. There's plenty of different methods for getting perfect IVs. You could do lucky trades, of course, that's probably the absolute best method. You could do raid battles, you could just catch a whole bunch of Pokemon and appraise every single one of them. Or you could hatch a whole bunch of eggs and hopefully pick yourself up a 100% IV that way. And that is precisely how I got my first ever hundo. Back in the early days, Magikarp was one of the Pokemon you could get from 2-kilometer eggs. And lucky enough, one of the eggs that I hatched produced a 100% IV, and it was my first ever hundo. And to this day, I still am very fond of this Pokemon. It's one of the Pokemon that I've dedicated a lot of time and effort into maxing out and making it my best buddy. It's one of those Pokemon that holds a very soft spot in my heart. Like, getting your first hundo is definitely quite an experience. But again, if you get to my point where you've played for several years, you will likely get yourself a ton of hundos. So if you still do not have yourself a perfect IV, don't worry, the game is designed for you to eventually get one as long as you're continuously playing this game. Now, the next thing that I would consider to be the most memorable falls along the same lines as the first two entries, and that is of course the first time you get yourself a perfect IV legendary. Now, legendaries are a little bit different compared to your average Pokemon. These are Pokemon that are often considered the most powerful, and then at the same time, you could only get them typically from raid battles. It's going to be really difficult for you to get yourself a 100% IV of a legendary, mainly because you can't just simply go out and farm them in the wild. You have to do a whole bunch of raids, and every single raid does give you a different IV. And often it's going to take you several raids before you can get yourself your first hundo, but sometimes you might get lucky and get one early on. This is something that may not necessarily happen to everyone, but this is more of a personal story. My 100% IV Raikou. This one is one that I would consider to be my most special legendary. The reason why I say that is because, well, when it comes to this particular Pokemon, I actually caught it on my wedding day. It was one of those Pokemon that I did not ever expect to get. So what ended up happening, let me kind of share this story real quick. So basically on my wedding day, I was just full of butterflies. I was just extremely nervous. So what I decided to do is I went out and did a couple of raids just to get rid of some of the nervousness that I was feeling. And yeah, there was a couple of Raikou raids where I was at. I was down in downtown Chicago, like I think it was like 7 o'clock in the morning, and there was a couple of legendary raids nearby. And because it's 7 o'clock in the morning, and back then you really couldn't complete raids unless you had a pre-made group, I was not expecting to take any of these down. So I just jumped into a lobby thinking maybe like some people might join in. Sure enough, there was maybe about 8 trainers. I think they were just all pugs, like people just that happened to be in the area. And yeah, we took it down, and sure enough, it was a 100% IV. So this is my wedding day 100% IV Pokemon. This is one that I will always hold in my Pokemon storage. It's one that every time I look at it, it does give me a lot of feelings and a lot of memories. So yeah, this is definitely one of those things that you might be able to experience. Not necessarily on your wedding day, but maybe some sort of special event. Maybe on your birthday, maybe on your wedding anniversary. I really do not know what it could be, but maybe for some sort of special event, you could get yourself something really cool, just like this one. Alright, now let's move on to another thing which I would consider to be the most memorable, and this is more of an experience rather than something that you would catch in the game, and that is of course your very first live in-person event. I'm talking about Pokemon Go Fest, Go Tour, whether it be the Wild Area event, which was recently introduced, or City Safari. The very first one that you attend that is a live in-person event at New York City or LA or one of the big major cities. Those are always so memorable because the experience is definitely something different than even the global versions of these events. And I really do think that the first one you ever go to is certainly quite memorable because not only do you see a lot of trainers from across the world, but you might run into some friends that are on your friends list that you did not even realize lived in that area. Like, sometimes I'll come across players from different parts of the world that I did not even realize was in my friends list. Like, people have come up to me and said, hey, we have a lucky trade, and I'm from the UK. You know, stuff like that has happened. And I will say that when it comes to these live in-person events, they're definitely underrated, and in my opinion, they're kind of like the bread and butter of the true Pokemon Go experience. So if you want to get the absolute best thing out of this game, you definitely need to go to one of these live in-person events one day. I do think it's worth the financial investment. It's definitely an experience, and probably the penultimate experience when it comes to playing Pokemon Go. And then finally, this is probably one that a lot of players were expecting to be on this list, or maybe it's something that you did not even think about, but probably one of the most memorable moments, and probably something that a lot of players have still not yet achieved, is when you finally hit max level. Whether that be when you hit level 40 back in the day, or after they increase the level cap, it's going to be when you hit level 50. It's definitely a memorable day. Like, it's going to be really difficult to top because hitting the max level, especially right now with level 50, is such an intense grind. Like, you need so much experience, you need to do so much work, and especially with level 50 because there's all these different tasks and challenges that you need to complete in order to reach that highest level, that it is definitely going to be memorable. Like, it's going to be the end of a massive grind, and for a lot of players, they probably will never hit it because they just simply do not care about hitting it, and that's totally understandable. But for all those players who do hit it, they will find that it is definitely going to be one of those things that they will never forget, and it's simply because it's such an achievement in this game. So yeah, maybe in the future they're going to increase the level cap and allow us to experience such a feeling once again, but as of right now, I will say that once you hit level 50, it's definitely one of the most memorable moments in a Pokemon Go's career. So yeah. In any case, that's going to be it for this video. Let me know your thoughts regarding everything that I talked about down below. Is there a particular event or Pokemon or something in the game that you would consider to be one of the most memorable? Definitely share what that is in the comments down below, and yeah, let's have a great discussion. Thank you so much for making it all the way to the end of this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe if it's your first time here, and don't forget the notification bell so you can stay up to date on whenever I upload videos. Real quick, let me give a shout out to all of my patrons on Patreon. You all make this channel content possible. If you want to support the Jinsula channel, the absolute best way is always going to be by joining my Patreon. And if you become a paid Patreon member, I will add you to my Pokemon Go friends list. So if that means for stuff like remote raids and the friendship system, if you want to play Pokemon Go with me, then make sure you go and check out my Patreon. And just so you know, I will always prioritize my patrons whenever I send out raid invites. So that's something you should keep in mind. And if you want to support my channel without doing any of that, then you could do so by following me on social media. My handle is @Jinsula. I'm on the platforms that you see on the bottom of your screen. Make sure you go over there and give me a follow, and you'll have access to some exclusive content. And that's going to be it for this video. I'm Jinsula. Be safe, have fun, love yourself, and I'll catch you in the next one.